The gold dust scattered across the floor of the abandoned mine shaft was just enough to confirm what Levi Vance already knew: his partner was dead, and his share of their fortune was missing. The flickering lantern cast eerie shadows on the rough-hewn walls as Levi knelt, running his callous fingers through the telltale specks of yellow. 3 years of backbreaking labor, 3 years of promises, and 3 years of friendship all ended with a knife in the back and an empty strongbox. Sweetwater, Wyoming Territory, 1878, was no place for the soft-hearted. The railroad had brought opportunity, but also the vultures who preyed on it. Levi had learned that lesson the hard way, first as a Union soldier in a war that had ended 13 years ago but still haunted his dreams, and now as a prospector betrayed by the only man he trusted since. He stood, brushing the dust from his worn denim trousers, his thoughts turning to what remained of their claim: the real fortune, the one his partner didn't know about. 20,000 in gold coins buried where no one but Levi could find it. He'd suggested the hiding spot himself, an insurance policy that had just saved him from complete ruin. "Damn you, Miles," he whispered to the empty mine. "I hope it was worth it." 3 days later, Levi rode into Sweetwater with nothing but his horse, his Colt revolver, and a map memorized in his head. The town had grown since he'd last visited. New storefronts lined the muddy main street, and the constant hammering of construction punctuated the typical sounds of commerce and conversation. He tied his horse outside the Silver Dollar Saloon, dust from the trail still clinging to his clothes. A drink first, information second, then he'd find a place to stay while he figured out his next move. The plan formed methodically in his mind as he pushed through the batwing doors. The late afternoon crowd was then a few card players, a tired-looking bartender, and a piano player half-heartedly tapping out a tune in the corner. What caught Levi's eye, however, was the woman serving drinks. She moved with a quiet dignity that seemed at odds with her surroundings, her auburn hair pinned up but with a few rebellious strands framing a face that spoke of both hardship and determination. As she approached his table, he noticed how the other patrons either ignored her completely or watched her with undisguised contempt. She set down his whiskey without meeting his eyes. "Thank you, miss," Levi said, placing a coin on her tray. "You're welcome," she replied, her voice soft but steady. She hesitated, then added, "You're new in town." It wasn't a question, but he answered anyway. "Just arrived. Name's Levi Vance." "Talia Forsythe," she said, and he caught the briefest flash of apprehension in her eyes, as though she was waiting for some reaction to her name. When none came, she nodded slightly and moved to another table, where a red-faced customer grabbed her arm roughly. Levi tensed, watching as she firmly but calmly extracted herself from his grip and continued her work. The bartender, a round-faced man with thinning hair, leaned across the bar toward Levi. "I'd stay clear of that one if I was you," he said in a low voice. "The Forsythe woman's nothing but trouble." "What kind of trouble?" Levi asked, keeping his tone neutral. The bartender snorted. "The kind that gets a respectable businessman killed and then plays the innocent widow. Half the town thinks she done it herself for his money, other half thinks she was in cahoots with rustlers who did the deed. Either way, she's poison." Levi sipped his whiskey, watching Talia navigate the room with quiet efficiency. "And what do you think?" "Don't much matter what I think. Sheriff couldn't prove nothing against her, but folks round here don't need a trial to make up their minds." He wiped the bar with a dirty rag. "She's lucky Will Henderson even gives her work. Nobody else in town would." Later that evening, Levi secured a room at the Sweetwater Hotel and ventured back out into the cooling night air. His destination was clear the small cemetery on the edge of town. In the pale moonlight, he found what he was looking for, a fresh grave with a simple marker. "Miles Blackwell, 1842–1878. Sorry, old friend," Levi muttered as he knelt by the grave. "But your greed got the better of you." The sound of approaching footsteps made him reach instinctively for his revolver, but he relaxed when he saw it was Talia Forsythe, carrying a small bouquet of wildflowers. She stopped short when she saw him. "Mr. Vance?" she said, surprise evident in her voice. I didn't expect anyone else to be here. Just paying respects to an old partner, he replied, standing. Miles and I worked a claim together, north of here. Understanding dawned on her face. You're the partner he mentioned in his letters. He wrote that you two had struck a vein worth a fortune. Levi's eyes narrowed. You knew Miles? He stayed at my boarding house whenever he came to town, she explained, placing her flowers on a grave several plots away from Miles. He was kind to me when others weren't. Who are you visiting? Levi asked, nodding toward the grave where she'd placed her flowers. My husband, Thomas. Her voice grew quieter. He was killed last year. Supposedly by rustlers, but... She trailed off, then straightened her shoulders. The town decided I was somehow responsible. No evidence, no trial, just whispers that became shouts. Levi studied her face in the moonlight. She didn't look like a murderer, but he'd been fooled before. And were you responsible? She met his gaze directly. No, Mr. Vance. I loved my husband. I had no reason to want him dead. He believed her, though he couldn't have said why. Perhaps it was the quiet dignity in her bearing, or the weariness in her eyes that spoke of enduring injustice rather than guilt. Miles never mentioned you in his letters to me, Levi said. A faint smile crossed her lips. He was a private man. But he spoke of you often, his partner who fought at Shiloh, who could track a deer across bare rock, who never went back on his word. The irony wasn't lost on Levi. People change, he said flatly. They walked back toward town together, an unlikely pair in the moonlight. Talia explained that she had lost her boarding house after her husband's death, when the bank called in their loan unexpectedly. The saloon job was all she could find, the only work Will Henderson would give her because, as he put it, fallen women belong in saloons. I'm no fallen woman, she said firmly. But in this town, perception is more powerful than truth. Over the next few days, Levi made himself visible around town, establishing his presence while quietly gathering information. He learned that Miles had indeed been in Sweetwater regularly, always flush with cash, always talking about the fortune he and his partner were amassing. He died in what the sheriff called a mining accident, though Levi knew better. The knife wound in Miles' back hadn't been caused by any cave-in. He also observed how the townspeople treated Talia, the way women pulled their children away when she passed, how merchants overcharged her or refused to serve her altogether, the crude propositions from men who assumed a murderer would have no standards. One evening, after helping her fend off a particularly aggressive drunk outside the saloon, Levi walked Talia to her small rented room behind the laundry. Why do you stay? He asked. There are other towns, places where no one knows you or your past. Talia's eyes flashed with sudden fire. Because running would be admitting guilt. Because this was my home, and these people were my friends before they decided I was a killer. She paused, the fight leaving her as quickly as it had come. And because I have nowhere else to go. No family, no money for a fresh start. Levi thought of the buried gold, his ticket to anywhere he wanted to go. He'd come to retrieve it, then planned to head to California or perhaps up to Montana. But something about Talia's quiet resilience made him hesitate. What if you had the means to leave? Would you go then? She looked at him curiously. Why do you ask? Just wondering, he said, tipping his hat as he turned to leave. Good night, Miss Forsythe. The next morning, Levi rode out of town before dawn, following the map in his memory to the place where he and Miles had buried the strongbox. The location was remote, a day's ride from Sweetwater, deliberately chosen for its obscurity, a lightning-struck oak on a small rise, visible only if you knew exactly what you were looking for. The ground had been undisturbed since they'd buried the box 6 months earlier. Levi dug methodically, the familiar weight of the shovel in his hands a reminder of the years spent searching for gold. When the metal edge struck something solid, he felt a surge of satisfaction. The strongbox was still there, still locked, still heavy with the weight of $20,000 in gold coins. He opened it just enough to confirm the contents, then closed and reburied it, marking the location in his mind. He wasn't ready to retrieve it yet. Something about Sweetwater, about Talia Forsythe, made him want to linger, to understand more before he made his next move. Returning to town the following day, Levi found Sweetwater in an uproar. Sheriff Dawson, a grizzled man with a perpetual scowl, was posting notices on the bulletin board outside his office. A crowd had gathered, murmuring angrily. "What's happened?" Levi asked a nearby shopkeeper. "Stage was robbed yesterday, 5 miles east of town," the man replied. "Driver killed, strongbox taken. Sheriff's organizing a posse." Levi scanned the crowd, noting the anger in their faces, the way some were already armed and mounting their horses. Then he saw Talia, standing at the edge of the gathering, her face pale. As he moved toward her, he heard a voice rise above the others. "Maybe we ought to check the Forsythe woman's place. Seems mighty convenient, another robbery so soon after she started keeping company with a stranger." Heads turned toward Talia, and Levi saw fear flash across her face before she composed herself. "I had nothing to do with any robbery," she said clearly, though her voice shook slightly. "Neither did Mr. Vance. He just returned to town this morning." Sheriff Dawson pushed through the crowd toward them. "That true, Vance? Where've you been?" "Checking on my old claim," Levi replied steadily. "Rode in about an hour ago." The sheriff's eyes narrowed. "Anyone see you out there? Anyone vouch for where you were yesterday?" "I travel alone, Sheriff. But my horse is still cooling down at the livery if you want to check." A man stepped forward. Warren Prescott, the banker who, Levi had learned, had called in Talia's loan after her husband's death. "The Forsythe woman has a history of associating with criminals," he said loudly. "First her husband, then Miles Blackwell, now this drifter. I say we search her room, see if she's hiding anything." The crowd murmured in agreement, the tension rising. Levi stepped closer to Talia, his hand resting casually near his revolver. "You'll need a warrant for that, Prescott," the sheriff said, though without much conviction. "And evidence. Since when has lack of evidence stopped this town from condemning me?" Talia asked bitterly. "Search my room if you must. I have nothing to hide." The search revealed nothing, of course, but the damage was done. That night someone broke the windows of Talia's rented room and painted "Murderer" across her door. When Levi found her the next morning, she was calmly sweeping up glass, her few possessions packed into a single carpet bag. "Will Henderson fired me," she said without preamble. "Says I'm bad for business." "Where will you go?" Levi asked, taking the broom from her hands and continuing the task himself. "I don't know. The next town, I suppose. Start over." She gestured to her small bag. "At least I don't have much to carry." Levi made a decision then, one that had been forming in his mind since he'd returned from the buried gold. "I'm heading north tomorrow," he said casually. "There's a small town near the Montana border where no one knows either of us. I could use some company on the trail, if you're interested." Talia looked at him suspiciously. "Why would you want to help me? You barely know me." "I know enough," he replied. "I know you're alone in a town that's decided to hate you without cause. I know what that's like." He set down the broom. "And I know Miles Blackwell wasn't the man I thought he was, nor the man he portrayed himself to be to you or anyone else." Her eyes widened. "What do you mean?" Levi told her then about finding Miles in the mine, about the missing gold dust, about his suspicion that his partner had been planning to disappear with their entire fortune. "He didn't count on the gold I'd already hidden," Levi finished. $20,000 buried where only I could find it." Talia sank into a chair, her face pale. "So you think someone killed him for the gold he took from you?" "It's the most likely explanation. Greed makes for dangerous enemies." He knelt in front of her. "Come with me, Talia. We can both start fresh somewhere new." She studied his face. "Why would you share your new beginning with me? What do you want in return?" "Nothing," he said honestly. Just the chance to help someone who needs it, the way I once needed help and didn't get it. He stood, offering her his hand. What do you say? After a moment of hesitation, she took it. When do we leave? They departed at dawn the next morning, before the town was fully awake. Levi had purchased a gentle mare for Talia and supplies for the journey. Their route would take them back past the buried gold, which he planned to retrieve along the way. As they rode out of Sweetwater, Levi noticed Talia didn't look back once. Her gaze remained fixed on the horizon, on the future that lay ahead. They made camp the first night in a sheltered hollow near a small stream. As Levi built a fire, Talia arranged their bedrolls on opposite sides of the flames, maintaining a proper distance. They ate a simple meal of beans and jerky, the silence between them comfortable rather than strained. Tell me about your husband, Levi said eventually. If you don't mind talking about him. Talia gazed into the fire. Thomas was a cattle buyer. He traveled throughout the territory, purchasing stock for eastern markets. He was kind, honest. We were married 4 years. A faint smile touched her lips. He used to bring me wildflowers from wherever his travels took him, press them in his ledger book. How did he die? Levi asked gently. They found him on the trail back to Sweetwater. He'd been shot. Her voice grew tight. He was carrying a substantial amount of money payment for a large herd. The money was gone. And the town suspected you because I didn't cry enough at the funeral, according to Mrs. Prescott. Because Thomas and I had argued before he left on his last trip. Because I was an outsider, a schoolteacher from Boston who never quite fit in. She looked up at Levi. And because Warren Prescott needed someone to blame. The banker? Why would he need a scapegoat? Talia's eyes hardened. Because Thomas had discovered discrepancies in the bank's accounts. He believed Prescott was embezzling from his clients, including the cattle company Thomas worked for. Understanding dawned on Levi. So Prescott had motive to want your husband dead. Yes, but I could never prove it. Without evidence, it was just the wild accusation of a grieving widow. She wrapped her arms around herself. And then Prescott began spreading rumors about me, about Thomas being involved with rustlers, about me having a lover. Before long, the entire town had convicted me in their minds. Levi studied her across the fire. Did you ever consider that Prescott might have been behind Miles' death too? She looked startled. Why would he kill Miles? Miles was flashing a lot of money around town, talking about our strike. If Prescott is as greedy as you suggest, maybe he saw an opportunity. Levi poked at the fire thoughtfully. It would explain why someone knew exactly when to find Miles alone at the mine. They fell silent, each lost in thought. Later, as the fire burned low, Levi spoke again. We'll reach the gold tomorrow. Once we have it, we can head straight north, be across the territory line within a week. Talia nodded, then hesitated. Levi. Thank you. For believing me when no one else would. In the dying firelight, their eyes met, and something passed between them, an understanding, a connection forged in shared injustice and the promise of redemption. The next day they reached the lightning-struck oak by midday. Levi retrieved the shovel from his pack and began to dig while Talia kept watch. The work went quickly, and soon he uncovered the strongbox. As he lifted it from the earth, a sense of satisfaction washed over him. This was his insurance, his future, and now possibly hers as well. He opened the box to show Talia the gold coins nestled inside, gleaming in the sunlight. $20,000, he said. Enough to start a new life anywhere we choose. She stared at the fortune, then looked up at him with eyes full of questions. Why would you share this with me? You could go anywhere, do anything with this money. Levi carefully closed the box. Maybe I'm tired of being alone. Maybe I see something in you worth knowing better. He secured the strongbox in his saddlebag. Or maybe I just want to do one good thing after years of only looking out for myself. They made camp early that evening, both aware that with the gold now in their possession, they needed to be vigilant. As they sat beside the fire, Levi told Talia about his life growing up on a Pennsylvania farm, fighting in the war at 18, drifting west afterward in search of purpose and finding only an endless series of mining camps and broken dreams until he partnered with Miles. "What about you?" he asked. "How does a Boston schoolteacher end up in Wyoming territory?" Talia smiled, a genuine one that transformed her face. "Adventure, I suppose. My parents died when I was 20, leaving me with few prospects and a restless spirit. When I saw an advertisement for teachers needed in the West, it seemed like Providence." Her smile faded. "I met Thomas my first week in Sweetwater. He was different from the other men, educated, gentle, interested in more than just having a wife to cook and clean." "You loved him very much," Levi observed. "I did." She met his eyes across the fire. "Is it wrong that I'm beginning to believe I might find happiness again? Sometimes I feel guilty for even considering it." Levi shook his head. "Living isn't a betrayal of those we've lost. It's the only tribute that matters." That night, for the first time, Talia moved her bedroll slightly closer to his side of the fire. On the third day of their journey, disaster struck. They had stopped at a stream to rest the horses when Levi noticed dust on the horizon, riders approaching fast from the direction of Sweetwater. "We've got company," he said quietly, reaching for his rifle. "At least 4, maybe 5 riders." Talia's face paled. "Do you think they're following us?" "Could be coincidence, but I doubt it." He handed her the reins of both horses. "Take the animals into those trees. Stay hidden. What about you?" "I'll see what they want. If things go badly, ride north and don't stop until you reach the next town." He patted the saddlebag containing the gold. "You know what's in here. It's yours if anything happens to me." "I'm not leaving you," she said firmly, tying the horses in the cover of the trees instead. "We face this together." Before Levi could argue, the riders came into clear view. Sheriff Dawson led the group, with Warren Prescott and 3 other men Levi recognized from Sweetwater close behind. "Vance!" the sheriff called, reining in his horse. "Thought we might find you headed this way." Levi stepped forward, keeping his rifle visible but not raised. "Something I can help you with, Sheriff?" "You can start by handing over what you stole," Prescott said, his face flushed with anger or exertion. "We know you robbed the stage." "I did no such thing," Levi replied calmly. "Neither did Miss Forsythe." The sheriff dismounted, his hand resting on his holstered pistol. "Then you won't mind if we take a look at your saddlebags? Got a witness says they saw a man matching your description near where the stage was hit." Talia stepped forward. "That's impossible. Levi was with me." Prescott's eyebrows rose. "With you, was he? How convenient. The town murderer is vouching for the town thief." "We're not going back to Sweetwater," Levi said firmly. "We've done nothing wrong, and we're leaving the territory. After you hand over what's in those saddlebags," the sheriff insisted, taking a step closer. Levi raised his rifle slightly. "That's far enough, Sheriff. You've got no warrant and no real evidence. Just Prescott's word, which I'm starting to think isn't worth much." One of the other men, a heavy-set rancher named Hollis, spat on the ground. "Looks like we got ourselves a standoff, boys." The tension stretched taut as a bowstring. Levi knew he couldn't outshoot all 5 men, but he also knew he couldn't let them take the gold or Talia. "Sheriff," Talia said suddenly, her voice clear and strong, "did you ever investigate why Warren Prescott called in my loan immediately after Thomas died? Or why he spread rumors about me so quickly? Or why, perhaps, he's so eager to see us brought back to Sweetwater?" The sheriff frowned. "What are you suggesting, Mrs. Forsythe?" "I'm suggesting that my husband found evidence that Mr. Prescott was embezzling from his clients. I'm suggesting that perhaps the man who had the most to lose from that discovery is the same man who had my husband killed, and then made sure I was too disgraced to be believed." Prescott's face contorted with rage. "That's a damned lie. She's trying to distract you, Sheriff. The gold is in those saddlebags." "Yes, there is gold," Levi admitted, surprising everyone. $20,000 that I earned with 3 years of honest labor. Gold that my partner Miles tried to steal before someone killed him, possibly the same someone who killed Thomas Forsythe. He turned to the sheriff. You want to know what's really going on? Ask Prescott about the discrepancies Thomas found in the cattle company's accounts. Ask him why he was so quick to turn the town against the one person who might connect him to Thomas's murder. The sheriff looked uncertainly between Levi and Prescott. One of the other posse members, an older man who owned the general store, spoke up. Come to think of it, Prescott was mighty insistent we formed this posse. Said he had proof they took the stage money, but he ain't shown us any. Because I was going to present it when we caught them. Prescott snapped, but Levi could see doubt spreading among the other men. Sheriff, Levi said, lowering his rifle slightly, check Prescott's saddlebags. I'm betting you'll find the money from the stage robbery there. He needed a way to explain how he knew where we were headed, so he staged the robbery, then volunteered to join the posse. He probably planned to kill us both and take my gold, too. The sheriff hesitated, then turned to Prescott. Mind if I take a look in your bags, Warren? Just to clear things up? The banker's hand moved toward his pistol. This is ridiculous. I don't have to. He never finished the sentence. The sheriff drew his weapon with surprising speed, pointing it steadily at Prescott. That wasn't a request. What followed happened quickly. One of the other posse members checked Prescott's saddlebags and found a canvas bag containing the exact amount reported stolen from the stage. Under the sheriff's questioning, the banker's story fell apart. He eventually confessed to killing Thomas Forsythe when the cattle buyer threatened to expose his embezzlement, and to hiring 2 men to rob and kill Miles Blackwell after learning about the gold strike from Miles' loose talk in town. He was an easy mark, Prescott said bitterly as the sheriff bound his wrists. Always bragging about how rich he and his partner were going to be, showing off dust and nuggets at the saloon. I just had to find out where the claim was. The sheriff turned to Levi and Talia. Looks like Sweetwater owes you both an apology. Mrs. Forsythe, I'm particularly sorry for how you've been treated. Talia's shoulders straightened. It's Miss Forsythe now, Sheriff. And I accept your apology, but I won't be returning to Sweetwater. The sheriff nodded in understanding. What about you, Vance? That's a lot of gold to be carrying. You're welcome to store it in my office while you decide what to do next. Levi glanced at Talia, then back to the sheriff. Thank you, but we've already decided. We're heading north to start fresh. After the sheriff and his posse departed with Prescott in custody, Levi and Talia stood alone by the stream, the tension of the confrontation slowly ebbing away. It's over, Talia said softly, as if she couldn't quite believe it. After all this time, Thomas has justice. Levi nodded. Miles too, though he wasn't the friend I thought he was. She touched his arm gently. I'm sorry about that. It's hard to lose faith in someone you trusted. He covered her hand with his own. It's harder still to find someone new to believe in. His eyes met hers. I'm glad I found you, Talia. Even under these circumstances. As am I, she replied, a slow smile spreading across her face. So, where exactly in Montana are we heading? There's a small town called Silverdale, near the Gallatin River. Good land, growing community. Far enough from anywhere that no one will know our stories unless we choose to tell them. She nodded, her eyes bright with possibility. A fresh start. For both of us. He agreed. Together, if you're willing. Instead of answering with words, Talia rose on her tiptoes and pressed her lips to his, a kiss that spoke of hope, of healing, and of a future neither of them had dared imagine just days before. They continued their journey northward the following day, the weight of the past gradually lifting with each mile. The gold was secure, their names cleared, and their hearts opening to possibilities neither had expected to find. 6 months later, Levi Vance and Talia Forsythe were married in a small ceremony in Silverdale, Montana. With the gold, they purchased a spacious plot of land with a view of the mountains, built a comfortable home, and established a successful horse ranch. Talia opened a small school in town, while Levi found that his skills as a tracker and outdoorsman made him valuable to the growing community. Occasionally, news reached them from Sweetwater. Warren Prescott had been convicted and hanged for the murders of Thomas Forsythe and Miles Blackwell. The town had undergone a reckoning of sorts, forced to confront how quickly they had condemned an innocent woman based on gossip and suspicion. On their first anniversary, Levi presented Talia with a leather-bound journal. Inside were pressed wildflowers, not just any flowers, but specimens he had been collecting throughout their year together, carefully preserving as Thomas once had. "So you never forget that beauty can follow pain," he said, watching as tears filled her eyes. "And that sometimes, what seems like an ending is really just the beginning of something better. I never thought I would find happiness again," Talia admitted, her fingers tracing the delicate petals. "Especially not with a stubborn cowboy who buried his gold and then dug up my heart." Levi laughed, drawing her into his arms. "And I never thought I'd find love with the woman the town had shamed. But here we are, proving that the best treasures are the ones you don't expect to find." As the years passed, their family grew. First came a daughter with Talia's auburn hair and Levi's determined spirit, then twin boys who had their father's skill with horses and their mother's love of books. Their ranch prospered, becoming one of the most respected in the territory. They never returned to Sweetwater, but they carried the lessons of that place with them, the understanding that justice sometimes requires patience, that redemption can come from unexpected sources, and that love, when it finally arrives, is worth more than all the gold in Wyoming territory. In the end, what Levi Vance had sought in the unforgiving mountains was not what he ultimately found. Instead of mere fortune, he discovered something far more valuable, a partner who stood beside him through danger and doubt, a woman whose strength matched his own, and a love that had been forged in the crucible of shared hardship and emerged unbreakable. The gold had been buried, but the real treasure had been unearthed in the heart of the woman the town had shamed, and in the courage it took for both of them to believe that sometimes, second chances are the ones most worth taking.